You're listening to the Hidden Killers podcast
with Tony Brueski.
Shavaun Scott is joining us, and we are talking about Lori Vallow Daybell. She obviously had some success in creating a mini cult, if you will, in the settings of the open world. Let's talk about the setting that she's going to be in now for the rest of her life, a prison surrounded by people who also are not getting out, or at least a lot of them are not. Is this a perfect setting for groupthink or to manifest a cult-like group of people to surround her as time goes on and she spends more years there?
You know, I can only imagine that the folks that are in prison with her are probably not the same kind of people that she's used to meeting over at the Mormon temple. And so my guess is that she is probably not going to be popular. You know, she had her own kids murdered, and I would doubt that she's going to be garnering any friendships or followers when she's locked up.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Obviously, the version of Mormonism that they had was a very extreme, not off the LDS teachings at all. But it somehow got there. It led there. And I am not in any way trying to insult Mormons or anything like that. But why is it that there are certain religious groups, it seems, that have easier ways of people breaking off of them at some point and really going off the deep end? We have seen a lot of it with LDS in terms of, okay, they've been as a regular member forever, and then suddenly they're going a little bit too far, and they're no longer members, but they're this new version of it. Specifically speaking of LDS, what is it about that group that, I don't know, it tends to create more people who are ready to leave and do their own thing and go off the deep end?
Yeah, and as I know the history of the LDS faith, you know, they were always based upon the appearance of the angel Moroni, or these, you know, these really emphasizing the supernatural or the magical element of faith. And you see that in quite a few of the fundamentalist faith, the snake handlers and the, you know, the faith healers and people who believe that they can raise the dead. Sure. So it seems to me that the more magical the expressions of religion become, the more out there, the more extreme, they do attract a certain kind of person who may be not as well grounded in reality. And so they're more prone to being influenced and having a lot of these really bizarre, fanciful beliefs, you know, something that they latch on to.
That's what I've noticed, too. I mean, just in the ways of their teaching. And I'm not super well versed, but I've done my research on this over the last year or so when following this case. And the ability of them to have essentially their own prophets, if you will, or the leader is the prophet, and he's having one-on-one conversations with God. I guess, you know, the Pope in the Catholic Church is kind of like it, but there's very different ways of that they believe they communicate with the afterlife or God. Is it that where there seems to be this ability for humans to have these supernatural powers, if you will, kind of at random, at choosing, where one can go, well, I'm getting the messages and I'm not the leader of the church, so I'm going to start my own thing because... Exactly.
And I've worked with a lot of people who have come out of religious cults, you know, of various sorts. But it always centers around having a leader or leaders who believe in these very dramatic, spiritual, mystical kinds of experiences where God is appearing to them, angels are appearing to them. They're hearing the voice of God. And we know a lot of this stuff is psychotic. You know, a lot of it is crazy. And sometimes they're being manipulated by a narcissist, or, you know, there's all kinds of flavors of crazy that you find blend together in these groups. But I think that in more conventional faith, you know, Presbyterians, even Baptists, whatever, you don't find a lot of the supernatural element. And when you get in some of these more strange offshoots, I think that's the difference. And that appeals to people on one hand, who are narcissistic or psychopathic, because they can use these events to try to control others and gain a cult following, or it appeals to people who are very naive and not grounded well in reality themselves, who maybe have their own psychotic tendencies, as the the Daybell's followers seemed to me, none of these people were terribly well grounded. They were all, they may look normal, but their feet were not on the ground, and they were very easy to influence in that way.
And what a toxic mix that is of the type of people that sort of attracts. Narcissistic, controlling, we're going to use to our advantage the fact that people will readily eat up whatever we say as long as we connect it that God told us. And then those who are willing to do that and find peace and solace in someone telling them.
Right.
It's like the middle ground is gone. It's either one, you're either the leader or the follower or the influencer or whatever. Talk about the process of getting out of that, of deprogramming someone to try and get recovery from being in a cult-like situation, like some of those people that we heard testify with the Daybell. Some of them even sounded rather hesitant to even be speaking negatively about it, even at this point.
Exactly.
It's got to be a difficult journey out of that if one is able to even get there.
Yeah, and what you see with a lot of folks who have been in one cult is they leave because the group has fallen apart or the leader has been arrested or something, and they get into another similar group, not with the same people, but another very immersive, here's your reality, here you belong, here is your family, here you're special. And so there are people who go from group to group to group, which is really tragic. I think there are, fairly healthy people who get caught up in something, particularly when they're young, when they're a teenager, and then, they may get out of it on their own as they gain insight, they grow up and they see there's some crazy stuff going on. But for a lot of people, it takes a lot of family members trying to, over time, stay connected with them and communicate about what they're witnessing, the dangerous things that they're seeing. And sometimes people with the help of family can get out that way.
Is it's obviously not an easy process. Do we know anything about, it probably depends on the religion one's trying to get out of, whether it's this or Scientology or whatever it may be, the success rate of getting a loved one out that has such
I do not know what the success rate is. And yes, it would vary on the cult and, the length of time the person was in it. And is it a group where they were living or whatever? Yeah. But yeah, even we look at all the celebrities that have been immersed in Scientology for years. Is there any way to deprogram Tom Cruise? Probably not,
Yeah. And Tom doesn't necessarily seem like one that wants to be deprogrammed either.
No.
Yeah,
no. I'd love to see someone try just for the curiosity. How would that go if you tried to deprogram him?
What do people who are in those sort of groups, I know they're discouraged from, watching anything negative or hearing anything or reading anything negative about the group. But I mean, people are people. I'm sure there's curiosities that go on. I mean, try to interpret what they're seeing if they were to watch like Leah Remini's docuseries about Scientology, for example, and they see firsthand the twisted, bizarre things that go on within a group like Scientology. And they're still an active part of it. Is it just you go into denial as anyone would do if you're talking or you're hearing someone speak negatively about your faith or religion?
Yeah, the thing I see happens is there's always, cults form around this idea of us and them. We're the good guys, and then there's this group of them, which is basically everybody who's not in the cult. And the thems are always the enemy. They're not just like, people can go to churches and go, well, yeah, there's the Methodist Church and there's the Presbyterian Church. They have slightly different beliefs, but they're all on the same side. Cults are not like that. It's we have the truth and everyone else is wrong or everyone else is the devil. And so when there is any criticism of the cult, people tend to just automatically deny it and let it slide off because it's them. They are out to get us. They're always after us. And so we don't believe anything that they say. And that's one of the hallmarks of a cult is that strong us versus them dynamic going on.
If you want to keep people in the cult, you basically have to make that one of the biggest, most important tenets from day one.
Yes.
So people don't find their way out.
So they don't find their way out is that everybody, and that includes everybody else out there, the them that's out to get us. It's all your relatives, everybody you grew up with, people in the news media, people who are, writing these awful stories that aren't true. They're all just out to get us. So that's one of the things that binds them together.
This is the examination of the hidden human condition. You're listening to the Hidden Killers Podcast.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Brueski.
Shavaun Scott, thank you for your insight. Always super appreciated. Hey, if you like the podcast and you want access to an ad-free experience of this and all of our podcasts in the True Crime Today family, well, sign up to become a premium supporter. Do that through Apple Podcasts right now. Even try it for 3 days free. Check it out. I'm Tony Brueski. Stay with us.